Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn is with us. She is a member of the Senate Judiciary and Veterans Affairs Committee. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Do you think this poke at Putin is a sign of his diminishing power, as you have said? And if so, how much damage do you think Prigozhin has done to Putin?
Eric, what we do know is we don't know exactly how much of this is real and how much is not. Also, I think it's important to note that Putin has been displayed as being very weak on the world stage. We know that his troops are not able to conduct this battle. They had to have the Wagner group, which is a brutal group of 40 or 50,000 troops, to go in there and carry it for them. We've also learned through this that the war is very unpopular with Moscow citizens and with Russians who were flocking to Telegram to see what kind of information they could get. And in all of this, I think it is so vital for the U.S. to make certain that Putin does not win, and that that we stand with our allies, and our allies and NATO show up to make certain that they are pushing back on Russia being in Ukraine.
There was a NATO summit coming up next month. Let's listen to Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, this morning. He says this potentially could take several months to play out. Here's what he said.
I think we've seen more cracks emerge in the Russian facade. It is too soon to tell exactly where they go and when they get there. But certainly, we have all sorts of new questions that Putin is going to have to address in the weeks and months ahead.
And what does Putin do? How does he address these at all? How does he coalesce power? Can he do that, or is this the beginning of his unraveling?
This very well could be the beginning of his unraveling, because the citizens in Russia have spoken up. They are not in agreement with him, and they don't agree with this war. And of course, we know that Putin's goal is to reassemble the old Soviet Union, to increase his grab on population and also on landmass. This has been a part of his goal from the first, but he didn't have a way to get there. And I find it so interesting that he is now talking to Xi Jinping today, and likewise conversations with Iran and North Korea, what I call the new axis of evil. And he cannot carry this forward without Wagner, without support from these other entities, because the Russian army does not have the training, the equipment, the wherewithal to execute this fight in Ukraine.
And you've been very critical of China, of course. So what does that mean if a desperate Putin, goes off to seek help from Beijing and also from Pyongyang and Tehran, these three enemies of America, to try and coalesce his power there?
Well, it just, again, Eric, shows you how vulnerable and how weak Vladimir Putin is. And the angst, I guess would be the best way to term it, of the Russian citizens who are watching this play out, who have seen him look weak on the world stage. And interestingly enough, I find it so interesting that Lukashenko is the one who stepped up and said, let me exercise my power and try to find a way to end this between Wagner and the Russian military, and thereby Putin and Prigozhin. And so anyway, he's providing that place for exile. That to me is very interesting, that you have a new entrant into this fight.
Yeah, that's the Belarus refuge, supposedly, that he has.
Yeah,
finally,
for Prigozhin.
For Prigozhin.
Right.
Prigozhin, finally, Senator, I mean, he's been, on Telegram, and the Russian people, they are on Telegram. They know the attacks. Prigozhin saying the Ukrainian war was a racket, that it was meant to enrich the elites, that Putin is benefiting from it, that it's an illegal invasion. It should never have happened in the first place. Does this resonate with the Russian people? At what point could that be a tipping point so that we see Putin's rear end getting out of there?
Well, again, what we have heard is that Prigozhin felt like he was not getting enough for his troops at this point in time to execute what he wanted to carry out. And thereby, with the Russian people not being in favor of these actions in Ukraine, it does make Putin look as if he's losing that grip, that his military is not prepared, that they are not properly equipped, to the point that you have Wagner pulling out. I do think it will also be interesting to see if you do have the Chechen fighters that show up to kind of fill that void, and what is going to happen with the Wagner fighters. We know they've been used in Syria, they've been used in Africa. Putin turned to them for this effort in Ukraine. So a lot of instability, a lot of uncertainty. Our posture needs to remain the same, that Putin cannot win, and that the Soviet Union cannot be reassembled. I think Ronald Reagan had it right in dealing with them.
The evil empire, said to Mr. Reagan, Tennessee
Yes.
Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, thank you. I guess the message is Putin better be looking over his shoulder. Don't take anything for
got it.
granted.
Take care.
Absolutely. You too.